Welcome to Unqualified Advice, the show where we try to make sense of business, investing, and life with just enough experience to get ourselves in trouble.
I'm Sean, and he's Dan. We both started different careers, Dan in IT, climbing the ranks to Chief Technology Officer in New York, and me in manufacturing, managing production quality across 3 countries.
At some point, we both decided we didn't know enough, so we went back to school for our MBAs. Me at Columbia Business School, and Sean at the University of Houston downtown.
And after all that, we figured the best way to share what we've learned and what we're still figuring out is to start a podcast.
So, if you like deep dives into decision-making, business strategy, and the occasional half-baked investing theory,
or just enjoy listening to 2 guys challenge each other's ideas and occasionally admit when we're wrong,
you're in the right place. Welcome to Unqualified Advice.
Hello, Dan.
Hi, Sean. How are you?
I'm doing well. And hello, everybody out there in audience land and viewing. If you're viewing, you notice we have a third person on with us today. Today, we have Lindsay Howard, who is in the real estate industry, to put it lightly. And she's here today to let us ask her some questions about what entrepreneurial real estate is like, how she got into it, and the like. Lindsay, before we get started, is there anything you'd like to just introduce yourself as? Like, what is your current life in real estate like?
Hi, Lindsay. Well, I'm a broker. Just became a broker in February.
Congrats.
Was an agent working as mostly just admin and transactional coordination. Before that, got my broker's license so that I could take over the business and make it mine. My mother has been kind of the star of the company up to this point.
Family biz.
Yeah, it is. It is a family business. Actually, so my stepfather was the broker. He's still technically the broker of our brokerage. I guess you could call me an associate broker at this point because I still work under, I don't work under my broker because I am a broker. Which as a broker, you don't have to work under anybody.
Is there? It sounds like there's almost like an apprenticeship sort of like stacking of credentials or like a path, like a ladder that you've got to climb to get to where you've gotten.
Yes and no. It just depends. I mean, you can become an individual broker on your own. You don't have to work under a company. So technically, I'm an actually individual broker. I don't technically work under anyone. I don't technically own Howard Home Realty, which is our company, quite yet. It's my goal in the next month or so to actually take over Howard Home Realty and just make it my own. So I'll turn it into an LLC and just take it on as my own.
That's somewhat of a daunting legal task that you're undertaking there.
Yeah.
What have you had to learn through that process?
That's going to cost money. And I just paid taxes, so I've got to make a couple more deals before I can actually take on the turning the DBA into an LLC.
Very cool. Well, I mean, congratulations on that, Lindsay. That's a big undertaking, and it's awesome that you're basically keeping a family business in the family as well. I think I think certain parts of our relationship will appreciate that.
Yeah. Kathy is the one that actually keeps us in business. If it weren't for me, I guess she and I, we do it 50-50, but she's the one that does all the sales. I do everything else in the back end.
Okay, that's interesting.
And I'm training another agent.
So yeah, so you were an agent prior to just recently earning your broker's license.
Yeah.
So I guess delineate it for us again. I think we talked a little about this off air maybe, but like, how does an agent relate with a broker? How does that structure work?
So in order to be a broker, you have to be an agent for at least 5 years, and you have to have a certain amount of education, and you have to have a certain amount of experience points, which is essentially experience.
Are those Texas? Is that a state law system? Yeah. So Texas would be one, I'm sure similar in different jurisdictions.
So it would be very similar in California and Florida. The laws in California and Florida are virtually the same. There are slight differences, but not much. So if I wanted to actually get my brokerage license in California or Florida, it wouldn't take much time at all for me to do so, and I could carry a brokerage license in both states. Yeah, and so if you're becoming an agent, obviously you just get your real estate license by doing I think it's 180 hours, I think is what it is, of real estate school, and mandatory classes, and there's elective classes, and then you work for the first 2 years. You actually work as an apprentice. It's called SAE, and you work underneath a broker. you hang your license underneath a broker, and the broker essentially is your mentor or your trainer, and they have to actually be a part of each of your first few sales. And then you have to take additional classes within those 2 years, these apprenticeship classes. Mm-hmm. Again, called SAE. After 2 years of being an agent, you become a full-on agent. You are no longer an apprentice, and you work on your own essentially, but still have to hold your license under a broker. Now, a broker can take a percentage of your commissions. They can charge flat fees. They can do it for free if they want, but they're not going to make any money doing that. One of the reasons why Kathy and I broke off from being under a brokerage and starting our own was because he had a broker's license. He just wasn't using it. Kathy was working under Keller Williams, and I started working with her as her assistant at that point. And that was in 2017. And so in 2017, 18, and 19, we worked under Keller Williams and then another brokerage. And I was doing everything that the transaction coordinators were doing anyway. And we were paying the broker a good portion of our income every month. And we just didn't think it was necessary. Nobody was helping us do anything other than double checking our work that had already been triple checked. So we said, let's do it ourselves. So January 1, 2020, we started Howard Home Realty underneath Lee, under his license, under his broker's license.
What a time to start.
Yeah, right?
So it was perfect. It was perfect timing. We were already doing well in 19, but then it was probably February, March, those interest rates just plummeted. So it was a great time to start our business and not have to pay anyone. And so I haven't had to pay anybody a commission ever since, which has been great because it was just time. I was already doing the work and trying to just make sure that everything was done correctly. So not this past September, the September before, I signed up for broker school.
So was it 2017? Was that when you first became an agent as well?
I actually got my license in 2010.
Okay.
Right before I met you. I was in real estate for about a year, and I absolutely hated it. I had been working in advertising before that. And when the economy crashed, I ended up losing my job and couldn't find work in advertising. Nobody was paying for advertising anymore.
All that dried up real quick.
I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then my mother had been in real estate, but at that point she had started her own business she had built an RV park on Lake Conroe and was busy with that, but she was like, well, why don't you get into real estate? And I was like, and so she's like, I'll help you out. And so I was like, I'll give it a try. Why not? So I got into real estate and was working for this really hoity-toity company, and I won't say the name of it now, but it was because they're still around, but I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And I gave it a year. I sold one house and I rented one house. And it was a bad time to get into real estate. Mm-hmm. Because nobody was buying and selling at that point.
I was going to say, it's not much better than advertising at that time. But this is after.
Well, there weren't a lot of good places to go.
Yeah, there weren't. But I was putting another notch in my belt as far as career choices. So I had many careers before that. So, and that's when after a year, I was talking with your wife. And there was a new bar opening up. I'm like, I've got to do something. I was a single mom and I needed money bad. And so got into the bar business. And again, because I actually went to school for hotel restaurant management, was in the service industry for a long time before I got into advertising. And so it was then that your wife introduced me to a bar owner. And she was opening up a bar, and they gave me a shot and gave me a couple nights a week, and then still wasn't enough money. So I found another bar up the street, and lots of people were still drinking. So I was able to make a living for a few more years up until 2017, and I was like, I'm done. Can't do that.
And then went real estate full time.
Yeah.
So was there anything that changed from your first go around to the second go around that made it more palatable?
100%. Two completely different career paths in real estate. So the first time I did it, I wasn't working with my mother. I was working for this hoity-toity company, and it was a big brokerage. There were probably 400 or 500 agents all in one office. I was required to do all these classes. I was required to be at the office a certain amount of time, for a certain amount of time. Then and again, there was no business coming in. I would have to sit there and take phone calls, and I would have to cold call people, and it's just not me. And I really don't like sales. I just didn't like doing sales at all. I wasn't comfortable doing it, and doing cold calls was just not my thing. So when I got back into it, Kathy, she was asking me if I would help her as her assistant, where, she was the one doing all the sales, and I was just getting in, doing all of the paperwork for her, setting up surveys and appraisals and talking to other agents. Not so much.
Some bolts of the real estate agent job itself
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and as time went on, I actually started doing a little bit more as far as the back end negotiations after, like the secondhand negotiations after the contract's been executed. What do you call it? When they do inspections, and they want things to be done, fixed or replaced or what have you. I was able to do the negotiations there too. So I wasn't doing the initial sale, but I was doing the back end sales of it.
I feel like I saw a big burst of new realtors on the scene in 2020 to 2022. Like every time I was on LinkedIn, it's like a friend of mine that used to be doing something else is now a real estate agent. Is that a misconception, or is that real?
No, that's not a misconception. But I'm going to tell you something. So that's funny because the house not next door to me, but on the other side, that's a realtor. 2 houses from her is a realtor. 2 houses on the across the street, they're realtors. 2 houses that way, they're realtors.
How much of the American economy is just people buying and selling houses to each other and slowly trading up?
Here's the thing with the new laws under NAR. The having to do there's more work that's involved, and I think a lot of these agents. I actually caught an agent showing property illegally this last week. Called them out on it because they didn't have a buyer's rep, and they were showing one of our listings, and their clients. Well, I can't even say call them. Their customer ended up calling us asking if we would represent them because their agent wasn't doing any work, and they wanted to move on this quickly. They didn't want anything to happen to it. They wanted this property. And we're like, well, we can't negate your buyer's rep with your other agent. We can get sued by talking to you. And he's like, no, we didn't sign anything. And we're like, okay, well, come on. So, but here's the thing. So with the new laws that went into effect in September, with that class action suit on the whole commission thing. NAR is the National Association of Realtors.
National Association. Okay.
Yeah, and NAR was sued along with TAR, which is the Texas Association of Realtors. Lots of other states were involved in this class action suit as well, and then it boils down to the cities as well. HAR was also involved in this class action suit, so Houston was hit hard. It was hit in every direction. So we have to be really, really careful who we're talking to, when we're talking to them, and if we can even talk to them. So I think a lot of realtors were kind of put off by that. And I think that even though they're still realtors, they still have their license, I think there's a lot of realtors that have kind of backed off.
I think for anyone who basically, in terms of real estate, is only paying attention to the headlines.
Yeah.
Might know that there were some fee changes or where fees go, but other than that, the ramifications of all of this is not. I partly asking for myself. I don't think it's 100% clear. So when you say there are people we can and can't talk to now because of this, could you walk us through a little bit?
Absolutely. So with the settlement. It requires every agent when they're representing, or if they're going to be showing, let's just say they even want to show a property to somebody else's listing, they have to have a buyer's rep. And in this buyer's rep, it outlines that the seller is not responsible for paying the buyer's agent's commission, that it is negotiable. but they are not responsible. Therefore, if the buyer's agent wants to get paid, they have to negotiate with the buyer whether they're going to be willing to pay any portion or all of their commission, and how much that commission is going to be. So in most cases, you'll see, I can't even say most cases. So what you used to see was most buyers reps or buyers agents wanted the seller to pay them 3% commission for a total supposedly of 6% for both sides. In my case, it's completely different because we work with a very niche clientele, which we can get to in a bit. So a buyer's rep has to have that document signed by the buyers that they've agreed to a certain percentage if the sellers will not pay a commission. And if they have negotiated, say, for instance, let's hypothetically say I'm working with a buyer and they say, well, we will only pay 2% of your commission or 2% of the sale towards your commission. If I go and I sell a listing that doesn't belong to me and the seller agrees to pay the commission, they only have to pay 2%. They don't have to pay 3%. Well, the buyer's agent isn't even going to get 3% because they have only negotiated a 2%.
Or the 2%. So in this situation, basically, the buyer has their rules around the dedicated rep that they're using, whereas before it was more or less assumed they were going to get a 50-50 cut of the 6%. Now the total 6% is more negotiable, and the buyer has to basically obtain specific representation in that agreement with their agent beforehand.
Yes.
Okay.
So if the buyer is only agreeing to 2% of the total sale, then the seller, even if the seller is offering 3%, that buyer's agent is only going to get 2% because that's what they've negotiated with their buyer.
Yes. Yeah.
But you can amend it, and if the seller is paying 3%, just go and amend it. It'll be fine. It's just there's so many pieces of paperwork that have to be done now to get your commission. You have to negotiate with when you're doing a listing. Now we have to, because we're the majority of our work is listings, and we work with new home builders. So the majority of our.
I think that's a very interesting niche we'd love to know more about. So yes,
I will tell you all about it. So with our clientele, we've been working with one specific builder Kathy's been working with him since like 2010. And, when she was on and off doing real estate. And so she took on this builder and has given him, because not only do we help him buy the lots that he's going to be building on, we get a really good deal on if we bring in the buyers as well. So we can do intermediary with the buyers, and we're doing good, which is actually honestly the easiest way for us to do real estate, because we're already working with the buyers regardless, because we just end up having to pay a buyer's agent. We offer, my builders offer 3%. I mean, it's just, we don't want to change anything. It's harder for us to sell if the seller isn't offering a commission. It just is. So anytime we take on a new listing, whether it's with a resale or a new home, we always encourage our sellers to continue doing 3% commission to the buyer's agent.
Yeah. I think especially as the seller, that makes a lot of sense, because if I'm the seller, I want that transaction to go right. I want you to be representing me, getting the most value I can out of it, getting the most value out of the listing. I think that the seller's agent has, for me, a lot of work that's absolutely needs to be done. So yeah, that makes sense. Whereas the buyer agent, I might find something and yeah, sure, you're there helping me, but I found it myself on HAR or on Zillow or something, and you're there coordinating and facilitating, sure, but as long as the lending documents are right, I guess I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually like cash buyers.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. Who doesn't?
Right.
Who doesn't?
Well, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask if you felt that, so the laws that, the rules that changed last September, how do you feel those have shifted the balance for buyers versus sellers? Were sellers versus buyers more advantaged? Is the average consumer out there going to buy a single family home? How has it impacted them?
I don't think it has. I don't think it has. Because I don't see much of a change. So here's a couple of the changes that I have seen now. Because we cannot advertise any commission base online or on HAR or on what we call
Zillow or yeah.
Well, we don't advertise on Zillow. Zillow is an aggregate that actually takes our listings directly from our MLS, and they don't even update it. I hate Zillow. I will say that loud and clear. I hate Zillow. They do
mistake.
Yeah. When people call me and say, "Oh, we saw something on Zillow and it does it, but I'm seeing something else on MLS," I'm like, because they stole they took our listing and they haven't updated it. So if we lower the price, Zillow isn't lowering the price. It still shows a higher amount. After a certain amount of time, it'll change.
Interesting.
So we cannot advertise any commission at all. We can't even say the word commission on the MLS anymore. So one of the things that I've seen now, and this is one of the things I actually really, it kind of makes me, it just grosses me out. When agents call me and say, "Are you offering commission?" If I happen to, because my builders, they are buyers as well. So when we find lots that he's like, "I want to put an offer on this lot," I don't call the agent, ask them if they're offering commission. I just put it in there. I put it in the contract. Give me my commission. This is how much I want. This is part of the offer. There's no reason to call this.
Redline it if you dare.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
There's no reason for me to call this agent and say, "Are you offering 3%?
No, the offer is contingent with the commission included. Like, absolutely, that makes sense.
There's no reason to call the agent and ask. Everybody had to take classes on these new laws, and a lot of the teachers that were teaching these courses were saying that we needed to call the agents and ask. So because I do contracts. I write contracts. I don't know, 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10 times a week. And if I were to call all these agents and find out and to ask them if they're offering commission, I just feel like an asshole. I mean, it's just gross. It sounds like it's salesy to me. Are you offering commission? I'll just put it in the contract. If you're not, fine. My builder will pay me my 3%. I've got a buyer's rep with him that says he'll pay the 3%.
Very cool. Okay, well, I think so. It's fascinating, all that hullabaloo to improve things for the quote unquote consumer, and really no end difference to the consumer.
Not really.
I'm sure like on aggregate, probably commissions have come down 1% or something, or like 100 basis points. But
so I have come across some buyers or some sellers that are like, "No, we're only offering 1.5%. I'm like, I don't care. It's a lot, it's a $50,000 lot. So I'm not making much money on it anyway. I'm going to make more money on the sale of it with a house on it.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Let's just move on and move quickly, right?
Yeah. Dude, it's something. You give me another question. I lost it. MLS. I keep hearing that. What does that stand for?
Multiple listing system.
Multiple listing system.
Yeah.
I've always just read through that acronym and never really thought what it means.
So, interesting question about MLS, though, I can give you. Well, not question. I'll just tell you. MLS has always been very territorial. So, HAR has their own MLS. San Antonio has their own MLS. Austin has one. Dallas has one. College Station has their own MLS. They're all coming together now, and they're all going to be one in Texas, and it's just going to be a singular Texas MLS, which is going to be great. Because if people are if people are in San Antonio and they're relocating to Houston, now they get to see all the listings all in one place, and I don't have to.
Whereas before that would have been the value.
I don't have to join. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was cutting you off. I'm sorry. But that would have been the value of an aggregator like Zillow, though, being able to come in and say, "Hey, I can do one search for me. I don't have to go to multiple different websites."
Yeah.
I never really thought about their value prop.
So there are others, though. There's there's homes.com. They're great. Realtor.com. They're great. And Zillow is just the worst. And what they do is they put other people, so you can advertise on Zillow, and what they do is they take other people's listings and put you on there, And so it looks like you're actually the agent on that listing. So they're calling the agent that's on that, what they're looking at, the address that they're looking at, and they think that's the listing agent. So they think they're calling that agent. Well, that agent has paid Zillow to be on that page, and it's gross to me. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Said it's like intercepting business.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Interesting. So around the concept, or around the idea of, I guess, being an agent for a builder, that has to be a much less stressful method than going out there and trying to sell independent homes, because you have a constant supply, right?
I do have a constant supply. Yes.
How is?
I wouldn't say it's any easier, because we actually see it through from start to finish. So again, we help the builders find the land, or they find the land, and we just help them buy it. And then we immediately put it on the MLS, and we're looking for buyers even when there's no.
Yet. Yeah. You just have an architectural drawing essentially in a 3D rendering.
We have a floor plan for it. Permits are already in place when we list it. Yeah, I guess we could list it without permits, but I don't think that would be right. But permits are already in place whenever we have it listed, and they're usually typically about to break ground, but not necessarily, not always. We have some builders that are sitting on a bunch of land at the moment, and they're not building until they get a buyer.
Interesting. How has that market been?
So, good question. I would say it had been really slow from, I'd say, about January until about 2-3 weeks ago. And I've seen a significant uptick in the last few weeks.
Why?
Tax season is over.
Okay.
Interest rates are still fluctuating.
What about them going up, maybe?
Yeah, interest rates are supposed to be going up again, but then there's people that say they're going to go down. You never know. It's a day-to-day thing. But I think a big part of it was that tax season, and also I hate to be political, but I think the political climate was kind of affecting it, and stock market. And
so was this first quarter slower than last first quarter, like year on year comparatively?
Oh yeah. Yeah, okay. I'd say not by a lot, but this year, yeah, it was a bit slower this year. I went to go visit my dad in Florida, and he was scared. He was like, "I've got to get all my money out of the stock market. I'm going to move to Portugal or Spain or something." Sorry about my cat.
I like it.
He's afraid that he's going to lose all his money in the stock market and end up on the streets. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, bye. I'll visit you in Europe. But I think a lot of people feel that way. They're worried that their money is not going to be around. They're not going to have their Social Security, Medicaid or Medicare.
Put it in real estate. That's interesting. My impression has been that the market's been kind of sluggish, so that's interesting. I'm glad to hear you kind of confirm that in terms of home sales.
The last few weeks, though, I've absolutely seen an uptick, a significant uptick in that. We were sitting on a lot of inventory, not getting any phone calls. Nobody was showing. And, Kathy was really concerned, and she's like, we've got to figure out some marketing. We've got to get these houses sold. And, we're trying to get creative on our advertising and using social media and email lists, and nothing was really working. And, honestly, this time of year, though, right at tax season, I've noticed every year since I've been with Kathy, I've noticed this time of year, it's always a struggle. Because I too am struggling during tax season, because I don't use a CPA. I do my own taxes. And I always end up waiting and just do it all at one time instead of quarterly, which I really should do it quarterly. And I think that's actually about to change. That's going to change once I get Howard Home Realty LLC.
I was going to say, I think you need to get into shape if you're taking on that extra.
Yeah, for sure. So, this time of year, it's always been, and then there's always the change, and the politics play a big factor in real estate too. Years that have an election, people are always like, oh, we're going to wait and see who wins. Who's going to be our next president? We're going to wait. So that affects real estate in a big way. And I saw it this time.
Are there buyers out there there's sellers out there that are wanting to sell that aren't able to find buyers, or more than anything?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's absolutely a buyer's market at the moment. Don't let anybody else tell you anything different, because it is absolutely a buyer's market. When interest rates are high, it's typically a buyer's market. When interest rates are low, people are wanting to buy, so inventory is snatched up.
Buy high, sell low. It's one of the times that actually works.
That's weird to think about, but yeah, I suppose. Well, but at the same time, the cost of the mortgage is so much higher at a
the big if is if you can make the
rate.
if you can.
Well, honestly, you know what? When people are talking about a 6% interest rate, think about, in the mid 90s, 6% was actually a really good interest rate.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 2020, when interest rates got below 3%, that people started thinking that 6% was high. It's not. It's really
never
not.
seen before low.
Yeah.
I don't expect it.
I don't
to
think
come
we're
back.
ever going to see it that low again, ever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the interest rates.
Not without inflation.
Yeah. Interest rates have been steadily on the decline since early 80s, I think. So it was just a long, slow downhill trend that we finally had to hit bottom.
Well, Kathy was telling me she started real estate in the 80s, and she was like, back in the 80s, it was tough. Not only did we not have computers, she was talking about the MLS machine that they would get in the little book, or each page would come out
like a Rolodex,
sort of, but you'd have to punch holes in the papers and put them in a book, and those were your listings for the month.
Wow.
Yeah, you have to go through there and read each page, and then take a Xerox copy of it. And then make appointments by calling the other agency. Anyway, and everything's great now that we have a computer. We just do everything online. Back in the 80s, though, interest rates were like 12, 15%.
Yeah, I think my parents' first mortgage was like 15.
Yeah. So 6%. That's nothing.
It's a good perspective to keep, I think. And even though, it might feel like a sting versus 2020 or 2021, if you're looking for a home, you're probably still a pretty good time to be buying in terms of those rates.
It really is. It really is.
I suspect some more volatility in those to continue for the
next there's so
48 months.
Yeah, there's so much inventory out there right now that you can probably find something that you really, really want and get it at a pretty good deal. You can probably negotiate that price down.
That's good sage advice, I think, for everybody out there listening. Thinking about buying a home. If they're needing an agent in the Houston area, we have one we can refer them to.
Yeah.
So there are other options. There's other options of getting your interest rate down too. Lenders.
So I was
will buy
in
up.
terms of with the buyers, are they, or not the buyers, the builders that you work with, are they baking that into how they're doing it and baking in incentives to basically for the builder contracts to be able to offer a lower rate?
Yeah. So we'll talk about. And we do it not necessarily just for the buyers, but for the buyer's agents as well. So we'll offer a bonus to the agent, like a $1,000 bonus if they bring in their buyers. We offer the builder will sometimes. I'm not saying all of my properties, but we work with several different builders. But we've had builders that will buy down points, which and I think it's a 3-2-1 or 2. Yeah, 3-2-1. So the first year, it's it knocks it down. I think it's 2 points, and then it goes down to 1 point the next year, and then it goes back to regular. It would be your regular interest rate after the third year. So
so I didn't realize they could tier the points in like that.
Yeah, and so if you got a higher credit score, your interest rate is obviously going to be a little bit higher. And if you find a builder or a seller that's willing to help buy down. But you got to be careful with that because because your interest rate's going to go back up each year, and you want to make sure that
It's a bet on what happens 3 years from now.
Yeah, well, and it's also a bet. You've got to take care of your credit. Make sure you maintain your good credit score, and then potentially try to refinance.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, and then from the builder's perspective, they tell me if I'm off base here. I think it would be, if I were a builder, I'd be perhaps after lowering my price by whatever, and then the buyer says, okay, well, I'll transact today if you bring it down this much more. And you're like, I don't want to bring it down anymore.
Probably not.
But I'll do a rate buy down for you. How about that? And it saves the buyer a whole bunch of money if they think they'll be in the home for a long time, specifically.
Right.
And then it keeps the asset price, the actual transaction price, higher.
So, yeah, I have not seen much of that. Actually, I can honestly say I've never seen that before. I've actually never had a rate buy down go through because it is risky.
How? In what way? What do you mean?
Well, again, because it's a 3-2-1. So the first year they're buying it down by 2 points. And then the next year it gets raised a point. Your interest rate's going to go back up.
That's what Toll Brothers is doing near me right now.
Really?
Yeah. It's like a 3-2-1. And then the house that I bought is 30-year fixed. They bought it down like 2 points.
Yeah. Well, your rate's going to go back up though.
No, it will not. It's 30-year fixed.
With the 3-2-1, it's not.
That's what I'm saying. I don't have a 3-2-1. I have a 30-year fixed.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Because your interest rate's going to be, you're going to have a fixed interest rate. It's just, but with the buy down, it kind of negates the fixed rate for 3 years. Because your rate is the rate. The buyer's just buying down those points. So essentially for 2 years. So it's the 2 points for the first year, 1 point for the second year, and then it goes back to normal in the third. So the rate the rate's not changing. It's what the buyer has paid into your loan. So it reflects on you, on your bank account, because the builder has paid into it.
And I can see why that practice is, good for certain buyers and also a risk for certain buyers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. So, if it's a little bit of a sluggish of a buyer's market, if you're out there wanting to, switch careers right now and get into real estate, Lindsay, is it a good time? Is it a bad time? What kind of sage advice do you have?
Prognosticate for us.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, come on. I'll be your broker. I'm looking for new agents. Because that's ultimately my goal with taking over Howard Home Realty, is to bring on new agents and train them to be great agents. And I think it's a personal preference. I mean, if you're good at sales, then yeah, it's a good time. There are a lot of areas that are inundated with agents. I would say Houston is absolutely one of them. Mm-hmm. I don't work in Houston. I live in Houston, but I don't work in Houston. All of our clientele is Huntsville and north. Mm-hmm. We are working in more rural areas. The neighborhoods that we're building in are typically like golf course communities or lakeside communities. Nicer, big homes. Acreage communities. So there's not as much inundation over there as far as real estate is concerned. And then Kathy's been in the business for so long that she's pretty well known, and people just call her. They know her. They know who Kathy is. So they're like, let's call Kathy.
So it's a good time to get in if you have a good broker you're willing to go work with that has a good foothold.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, but also that some portion for some of those big time brokers that you might have first kind of work out for it. It's a tough road to hoe if that's your chosen path that night.
Well, I know people that are getting into real estate. I have a friend that just got into it. She got her license in September, and she's working for I would say a mid-sized corporation, and she's happy. She's got a mentor there, and she's goes to all the classes that they require. She's got something called Mentor Monday that she goes and talks with her mentor, who's not actually a broker. Her mentor is actually another agent, but a seasoned agent. So she's happy. She seems to be happy. I think she's got her first listing, and she does a lot of open houses. And, that's what agents...
That's what you do.
New agents are going to start out. They're going to be doing a lot of open houses, and they're going to... I recommend a lot of networking and,
showing up.
Passing out your business card.
Yep. Yeah. Honestly, I think meeting the right person at the right time is a critical portion of that game.
For sure.
Yeah. And laying the groundwork that might not pay off for 4 years. Right.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can expect the first year as a new agent, you're not gonna make any money. You've got to if you're getting into real estate, I would either have a second job or a partner that is able to handle all the bills.
Yeah, and this kind of this is why being an agent in my mind is like sort of I don't want to use the word small in like a derogatory way, but it's like the small entrepreneurial start, right? Because even if you're working under a big broker or like you've got this big, nationwide known shingle on your front door, on your desk or whatever, it's still just you running a sales process, laying the groundwork, and killing what you eat, or eating what you kill. Sorry.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that's like,
Well,
I don't
and
know.
you also
Yeah.
have to pay that broker. You have to get you're typically going to be giving them, as a startup agent, you're going to be giving them 50% of your commission.
Yeah. If you start any entrepreneurial and like, unless you're selling, you're going to be paying someone, right? You've either got COGS or you've got rent or
Yeah.
both. It's
Yeah.
like getting started is always more money out than money in. And that's sort of like, I don't know, just how it starts for almost everyone. If you're
Yeah.
not just, I don't know, super lucky.
That's true. Unless you just have a nest egg that you get to go and
Take
well,
risk.
even then you're starting slow, but I guess you don't care about the revenue coming in. You're still starting. It's not like your revenue is going to be quick to give you a nest egg.
Yeah.
It's just you can afford to let it grow slow.
Yes.
I was actually really fortunate because when I started up again in 2017, I was asked to come to work, and she was swamped, busy, and really needed help, and so I started making money right away. I was fortunate, but not everybody's going to have that.
Sometimes better be lucky than good. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
From personal
I was very fortunate.
Never discount luck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Lindsay, thank you for taking some time to come on and talk with us today. I think we're at a good length here for our introduction to Lindsay Howard. Howard, I'm sorry. Would you like to offer a plug to any websites or anything where you want people to find you before I just shoo you away? No.
You just look up Lindsay Howard. My name is spelled Lindsay.
Okay. If you think of something, let me know. We can put it in the show notes.
Honestly, I don't. I mean,
Get some backlinks.
My website is howardhomerealty.com.
Okay, well, see, that's all we needed. That'll make it in the transcript now, and then it's there for the LLMs to find and send people your way.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to be posting this everywhere anyway.
Hell yeah! All right, excellent. Well, thanks again, Lindsay. We appreciate it, and thanks to everybody for tuning into our first possibly interview episode to be released on Unqualified Advice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Where's John?
And next time, we'll have to do it again with John to get his take on the legal aspect.
Yeah.
Because he does have a really interesting side of legal real estate. It's a very interesting niche. All right. Well, thanks all. We'll see you next time.